Welcome to our program on Consuls General on Indo-Pacific security and the Quad. We're going to hear updates and analysis from our expert speakers. Representing the Quad, we have Consuls General from Australia, India, and Japan. And for the US, we have our moderator, Vinnie Aggarwal, who is the director of the APEC Center at UC Berkeley. Now, we've been trying to do this format every year at Age of Society because we like being able to have the tough discussion but then afterwards having a fun cultural reception. So afterwards, we'll have food and drink from the countries that are represented up here on the stage. Our mission is to navigate shared futures, and what a better way to do that with this program and with all of you in the room. Thank you to the Quad consulates and their teams. Many of them are here today for all of the work and effort you put into hosting this event. We know it's not easy, so thank you very much. Thank you to our event sponsors, the Motwani Jadeja Family Foundation and ASHA, and Silicon Valley Bank. Where are the Silicon Valley Bank reps? This is a beautiful space. Thank you so much. Andy Tao's on our board, and he will also be here this afternoon. The additional consulates and trade office representatives who are also in the audience, we have reps from Hong Kong, the Netherlands. Why don't you go ahead and raise your hands if you don't mind, or stand up when I say your region or country. Hong Kong, the Netherlands, Norway, the Philippines, Taiwan, Republic of Korea, Singapore, I know you're here, there you are, and the UK. Great. And unlike Consul General Lim, please do, even if you're not on stage, do participate in the conversation this evening. I welcome our board, our advisory council members, and our team. Nina, Christy, Jason, Evan, our interns and volunteers, they're the best at what they do. Thank you very much for everything you've done to host this event. All of our speaker bios are on our website. Our program format, Vinnie's going to moderate a discussion with our Consuls General for about 40 minutes. That is going to be on the record. We are recording. And then we're going to go off the record for audience Q&A, so we can have a very in-depth, open discussion with all of you. During Q&A, if you have a question, introduce yourself, raise your hand, a microphone will be brought over to you. And then again, afterwards, we have a reception. And my colleague, Nina Udagawa, who curated this, is going to come up and tell you more about the reception. So please, welcome our speakers, and we'll hand it off to Vinnie Aggarwal, our moderator. Please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret, for this great opportunity. I'd like to thank the Asia Society for this exciting, a little loud, sorry, timely event and asking me to moderate. Margaret said I could ask any difficult questions, but we shared the easy questions with the Consul Generals, but then those are the open questions, and I'll ask the tough ones. No, I'm kidding. They're all very upset by that. All right, so I was going to give a little background on the Quad. Not everybody knows what the Quad is. So the Quad, or Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, is a strategic partnership involving 4 countries: the United States, Japan, India, and Australia. It was initially conceived as a loose grouping. It has evolved into a multilateral framework. It addresses security, economics, and global challenges that was formalized in 2007. The roots of the Quad actually lay in the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, where 4 countries collaborated on disaster relief. In 2007, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe promoted the Quad with an emphasis on ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific, and that is a term that the Japanese are very proud of it, and correctly so. This marked the start of its strategic dimension, though it faced skepticism from China, which saw it as an attempt to contain them. So there was a setback in 2008, and Australia pulled out of the Quad because of concerns about antagonizing China. But then in 2017, it was revived again. And the grouping was revived amidst growing concerns about China's activities in the South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific. And again, the focus shifted to promoting a rules-based order, freedom of navigation, and a counterbalance to China's influence. It was then institutionalized, and in 2021, the first Leaders Summit was held, and we'll have another one this year, reflecting its importance in geopolitics. So let me just briefly talk about 4 areas in which the Quad has been active. One is Indo-Pacific security, from its name, clearly, and they've conducted naval exercises such as the Malabar exercise. Economic and technological cooperation, including supply chain resilience, also focusing on emerging technologies like 5G, AI, and cybersecurity. Climate change and infrastructure, and thinking about China's Belt and Road Initiative and what can be done maybe to counter, in some cases, cooperate with them. And finally, because of the unfortunate COVID crisis that we went through, they worked on vaccine diplomacy. So what are the current challenges of the Quad? First is that Beijing often says very directly that the Quad is an anti-China bloc, describes this as an Asian NATO. There's also some differences among members. I won't go into great details because we have experts from each country, but India has become somewhat cautious about explicitly confronting China. India is trying to have good relations with China, and it does have border disputes, so it doesn't want to go all in on an American alliance as the Americans might want. The Australians and Japanese are more aligned with some of the concerns about China. In his second term, President Donald Trump has signaled a strong commitment to the Quad, comprising these 4 countries, and this renewed focus underscores the administration's strategy, I think, to counter China's growing influence, which sets up some interesting alliance and geopolitical issues that we can talk about later. Let me put this under myself. So, what I'm going to do next is introduce each of the Consul Generals. Consul General Chris Ketter was appointed Consul General in San Francisco in 2023. He's a former senator for Queensland, and he was senior advisor in the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defense. Consul General Osumi was appointed Consul General in August 2023. He was born in Japan, graduated from the University of Tokyo, and he has had many experiences in North America. This is not his first rodeo. And then we have Consul General Srikar, Reddy, and he has been worked in the Commerce Department, et cetera. And most interestingly, he's a doctor. So if anybody doesn't feel well, please consult him. But hopefully you won't have to engage in your medical practice here. Now, so let me begin, and maybe we should just go one by one for a first statement. And please do keep your answers as short as you can, a couple of minutes maximum. So, what do you think the Quad will look like under a Trump 2.0 administration? And I know that's speculating on American politics, but maybe a little speculation would be interesting.
No, I don't think so.
You don't want to speculate, okay.
Vinnie, I think the Quad has built up quite a momentum since its inception. And, you can see that over the course of the first Trump administration across the presidency of Joe Biden, the Quad meetings escalated from the status of senior officials to foreign ministers under President Trump in his first administration. Under Joe Biden, the meetings escalated to leader level. And it's very heartening to us that one of the first official acts of Secretary Rubio was the Quad meeting. And so we are quite encouraged by that. It was within hours of his confirmation that he met with the Quad leaders. And that meeting was very productive, and it was very interesting, the degree of alignment amongst all of the participants, understanding the challenges that the region faces, the centrality of the Indo-Pacific region to the future of the world, essentially, and the enthusiasm which all of the participants had for the future of the Quad. So we think that it has a good future. There is a lot of energy and enthusiasm. You only have to look at the joint statement that was issued on the 21st of January, which, although brief, did go to the shared commitment, the shared values of the Quad partners, and the commitment to working together going forward and building up to the next leaders meeting in India.
Thank you. Consul General Reddy?
Yeah, I would like to echo the sentiment expressed by my colleague from Australia. So as you earlier mentioned in your remarks, the Quad, which started in 2004 as a response to a catastrophe, which is tsunami, It has matured into many areas of partnership, especially for a open and a fair Indo-Pacific, which is more stable, secure, and also resilient. So a lot of activities have happened in various areas, as you rightly mentioned, in the maritime domain and also security in the critical and emerging technologies, even climate change. So we think that this will remain a priority for the current Trump administration, and which is also, like as my colleague mentioned, immediately within hours of the administration inauguration, we had this Quad foreign ministerial meeting where they also reiterated the commitment of all the countries for a open and a fair Indo-Pacific. And even that it was also stated in the joint statement of the Japanese Prime Minister meeting with the President Trump last week. So we hope there will be continuity in the engagement in the Quad.
Consul General? Yes.
Two things. One is three things. Good to be the last to speak. I don't need to speak a lot. But I think the first thing about framing is that the Quad is not against a particular country. That is the first thing I want to frame the conversation. But second thing is you may have noticed that Japanese Prime Minister went to DC last week, and last Friday there's a good meeting of less than 2 hours, and they issued a joint statement. You may find it very interesting to see that what is the direction of travel. And it says, in terms of Quad, it says that two leaders share the view on the severe and complex security environment and express their determination to continuously cooperate to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific. As part of such cooperation, the two leaders intend to advance multi-layered and aligned cooperation among like-minded countries, including Quad, Japan-US ROK, Japan-US Australia, Japan-US Philippines. So that's the statement. So it says where it is now. Thank you.
So, at least from my perspective, reading the news every morning, which is very exciting when you're in international relations, you never know which country is going to be taken over next. So it seems to me that the Trump administration is quite gung-ho on the Quad, but he's not so excited about international institutions or even multilateral arrangements. So one might argue that this particular alliance, which has dealt with many other issues of great significance, like the environment, COVID, and other issues, will be transformed into a defense alliance against the Chinese. I'm just saying from the American perspective, I'm not advocating this, I'm just saying that seems to be the case. And so the question is, given the many things that the Quad has done, especially under the Biden administration, expanded its scope to look at other issue areas, are you worried that this will become a narrow, defense-focused institution that will just be oriented against China? And if so, how will you try to encourage your American counterparts to see this more broadly? Would you like to start first? We can go different, mix it up. Consul General Osumi.
I still try to continue to fight against your framing of, it's journalistic, and it's okay for you, in your part, to say something like that. But for us, Japan has been doing a lot not to make this a kind of very narrow framework, and that's how we have been doing this. And of course, the different administration of all countries and all participants in any framework should have different priorities. And of course, that is being put into the discussion, but we are four of us, so we're going to discuss.
Ask you.
Yeah, like as my Japanese colleague mentioned, Quad group is not against any particular country. So we are all for maritime democracies. We are progressive societies and market economies. So we came together, as I said, because of a catastrophe, but then to make the Indo-Pacific more secure, more peaceful, and also more prosperous. So with this aim, all the four countries are working, and also, as we'll be discussing in the next few minutes, like there's a lot of positive agenda, especially with regarding to the infrastructure development, both physical and digital infrastructure in the Indo-Pacific, and also like promoting investment, basically to make all the people more prosperous. And also there should be stability and also security for all the countries in the Indo-Pacific, where the rule of law, everything is based on the rule of laws. So that is the purpose. But it's not against any particular country.
Right. Consul General?
Yeah, and thanks. And I would also push back on that thought that this is developing into a defence relationship. Each of our member countries have routine maritime interactions and defence interactions throughout the course of the year. This is not heading towards that. Although there are some security aspects of the activities of the Quad partnership, it's more focused on the underpinnings, areas such as quality infrastructure, critical technology, energy transition. These are the underpinnings for a prosperous, stable and open environment across the Indo-Pacific. So that will, I think, continue to be the focus. There are other defence relationships that we have, and we of course have AUKUS, but we work with our counterpart countries. You mentioned Exercise Malabar, so yes, we will have those interactions. But I think what will continue with the Quad is a focus on that stability, helping each other. This was an organisation born out of a natural disaster, coming together to strengthen each other, and I think that's the focus. And it's about giving options to countries to engage. And there are other sort of networks as well that we have, which you might come to, but this I think is going to be the underpinning for it.
Well, I don't disagree with any of you. I mean, I see security much more broadly. I do political economy. I think the environment is an important issue. I think COVID and potential the new viruses coming along could be a problem. But I worry that this administration shows an inclination to narrow the scope of what the Quad is doing. So have you had discussions with your Washington counterparts on some of these other issues in which the Quad was quite successful, in my view, to try to encourage a broadening of this Quad group to what it actually was during the Biden administration, when they were talking about many different issues and trying to deal with it, and not just make it security dialogue in a narrow way. So what strategy do you think makes sense to try to encourage the Americans to think more broadly in terms of security?
Well, as our Foreign Minister said at the recent meeting, ambition for the Quad is a good thing. But there's also a danger that if you broaden the focus too widely, then you risk underperforming in particular areas. So I think we will be continuing to work through this with our Quad partners and identifying those areas where it makes sense for us. Where are the key strategic risks for us? So that we need to focus on those, and we have identified some key activities that we'll be continuing to work on. So we are very much looking forward to working with the other members of the Quad, and this is something we have to work our way through together.
Consul General Reddy?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we see there will be continuity in the level of engagement in all aspects, and that's what after the first ministerial meeting, there was a joint statement. So wherein they said they discussed all issues frankly, and they want to continue, especially in the areas of technology, security, and also economy. These are the three things they mentioned, including resilient supply chains. So we hope we have not heard anything otherwise. Whatever questions you're asking, we only know that there will be continuity. That's what they said. There's a summit level meeting in India later this year. But the ministers also conveyed that they'll be holding regular meetings, discussing various issues in the run-up to the summit meeting sometime down the line.
So has the Indian government, just quick follow-up, has the Indian government thought of issues it might want the Quad to consider? You know, we've seen these other issues like technology, environmental. Is there some other issue you think might be useful to bring to the Quad?
See, all the partners are open. Anything which brings positive or which is good for the overall Indo-Pacific region, including the Pacific Island countries. So we are open to consider. So we have so many working groups. There are around 16 working groups at the official level. So they can discuss any of the partner countries. They can put some issue on the table. They'll be discussed, and they can again recommend to the ministers, and ministers then they will recommend to the leaders. So that's how it works.
I don't know, Osumi, what issues would Japan like to see the Quad discuss beyond the ones we've already seen discussions on?
We are like-minded countries, so I can totally agree with all what was said. So, that's the issue that I think I just want to mention this because your original question was about this, that when in 2016, that there's no word of open and free in Pacific, free and open in the Pacific FOIP, but now it's everybody is using this word. That's how that we have contributed to the discussion of to become this as a kind of common language. That's how that we coordinate among the countries, so governments. That's what we are going to see.
So do you see the Quad contributing to economic cooperation in some way? We have lots of economic global institutions. We have the WTO, we have APEC, we have ASEAN, which is not part of the Quad, obviously, but there are a lot of institutions in the Asia-Pacific region. Do you see that the Quad can also play a role in economic cooperation, a significant role? Is that something you would think would be useful?
Yeah, we could discuss. I think we have had certain cooperation in terms of the field of economy, and we could discuss. We are very flexible in terms of expanding or just shrinking the agenda.
Ready?
Yeah, like as I mentioned, the Quad currently is working on infrastructure, especially like open radio access network. So this currently we are deploying in Palau, wherein it will give secure and access to the telecommunication system, especially in these Pacific Island countries. And also, there is also discussion for the Quad Ports of Future Partnership. So the first workshop will be held in India. And as I mentioned, we are also trying to collaborate on the critical and emerging technologies, including climate and clean energy technologies, semiconductor, and also battery technologies, even biotechnology and space technologies. And we also have this Engage, which is Advanced Innovation for Empowering Next Generation Agriculture, wherein you're trying to come together to promote smart agriculture using the tools of AI robotics so that our farmers can benefit from this kind of collaboration. And also there's we call Quad CHAM, which is Climate and Clean Energy Package, wherein we are trying to promote hydrogen electrolyzers, battery supply, and also solar. So Australia is taking lead in that. And also in the Wilmington Declaration, they also envisaged a meeting of the commerce ministers. So we hope they will be meeting for the first time. So we hope whenever they meet during this year, so this kind of economic agenda can be taken further. And also, they also decided the development financial institution of all the countries, especially the export-import banks. So they will also come together, earmark certain funds for investment for the overall economic development of the Indo-Pacific area. And one more thing I would like to just here, there is the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, which is a Quad plus grouping in a way. We had 4 Quad countries, 7 ASEAN countries, Korea, New Zealand, and Fiji. So already 3 agreements have been concluded. Most of them have also entered into force. One agreement is on supply chains, second is on clean economy, and third is on anti-corruption agreement. So the Quad and all the important members of Indo-Pacific, so they're trying to, by concerted efforts, especially through policy and also through incentives, through standards, common standards, and also encouraging private investment, trying to generate the demand and also trying to access to the new technologies and also thereby also encouraging economic cooperation in these areas. This is not an exact FTA, free trade agreement, this IPF, but it is some sort of a agreement to encourage companies and also people to collaborate.
Well, these are worthy goals, and I totally endorse them. However, I might point out that yesterday Trump said he will no longer enforce the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA. And as you know, there's an OECD treaty on anti-bribery. So that seems to be a setback for multilateral cooperation. You mentioned energy cooperation, which I'm a big fan of, but on the other hand, you can probably see that President Trump has not shown much enthusiasm for green technology and the transition that the Biden administration was promoting. I'm not pushing Biden, I'm not just a Biden fan, but that's not the point. The point is the United States invested a lot in this green energy, and I think the Australians, Indians, and Japanese are all interested in this. So I guess my question is, is there some way that you can encourage these issues, or would you be willing, the three of you, to work together and then maybe present it to the United States? What is the mechanism by which these issues, which I think we all think are very important, we don't want them to go off the table and just talk about, China?
Well, I don't think it's useful for us to do a running commentary on the domestic policy of the United States.
That's true.
So we're not going to, well, I'm certainly not going to be involved in that. The important thing, Vinnie, for us is that we work together to negotiate our way through all of that, and we respect the policies of the Trump administration. They were fairly clear about what they were campaigning to do. They were campaigning for change. So that is quite clear to us, and we now have to, and we remain ready to work with the administration to further the goals of the Quad. But I just think it's important to note that we have to deliver. So you've heard from us about the various areas of endeavour that the Quad has. It's fairly broad and ambitious. So we do have to focus on the areas where we can deliver. Things like strengthening maritime security. That's something that Australia's focus on maritime domain awareness. The fact that our coast guards are cooperating, there's a project there. So these are things we will focus on, and I'm sure that the Quad will have a good future.
So could you talk more about defense cooperation in terms of how you see that evolving? I mean, I understand the other issues are complicated, and I understand why you would not want to comment on American politics, which is very complex. But how do you see defense cooperation evolving between the Quad members? I mean, maritime, other kinds of cooperation, thinking about high technology. Are you thinking about all of these as defense cooperation issues that you can bring together?
Well, we don't see the Quad as a defense cooperation organisation per se. Mm-hmm. It is about the underpinnings for the economic and development of the Indo-Pacific area so that our peoples can live in open, stable and peaceful environments. So that's going to be the focus. We have other defence arrangements, and as I said earlier, our countries work together routinely in terms of defence cooperation on a range of areas. So that's not the focus of the Quad. So I don't have much further I can add to that.
So maybe, since Australia is a member of AUKUS,
yes,
which I've attended many conferences on AUKUS, so how do you see the relationship between AUKUS, from an Australian perspective, because India is not in AUKUS and Japan is not in AUKUS, so how do you see AUKUS? Is there any relationship to the Quad, or does the Australians see this as a totally independent kind of organization that is focused on defense and security and other things like that?
Well, it's true to say that both the Quad and AUKUS have similar objectives: the stability, prosperous Indo-Pacific area. That is a common focus of both of those groupings. But AUKUS is very specifically the partner countries are working on defence cooperation, the submarine industrial base, Pillar 2 covering a whole range of critical technologies. And AUKUS gives us the capacity to collaborate and to share technology. So that's quite specific, and I've already covered what we think the Quad does, and it operates in a very different space, although in a sense it does contribute to the security and stability of our region because it brings us together, we work together, and we're underpinning the infrastructure, the transition to clean energy, the resilient supply chains that we need to have that are absolutely essential.
Mm-hmm. Consul General Osumi, we've seen lots of initiatives. The Japanese have been very active. For example, when TPP was falling apart because of Trump's decision to withdraw from TPP in 2017, the Japanese were very active in that, surprising many observers who said the Japanese are too passive, they're not taking an active role. But Japan was very instrumental in the passage of CPTPP. That's the Comprehensive Partnership on Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, the worst name one could ever think of, but that's okay. So the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a very important 12-country effort. So how do you see Japan's role in these international institutions more broadly? And I think we've talked about AUKUS quite a bit, but there are other institutions that Japan is very active involved in, APEC, WTO. Do you see Japan playing a greater role in trying to enhance the role of these institutions in the Asia Pacific?
We'll try. The short answer. Medium answer is we have been trying this. We have been trying to, for example, so-called, I don't like to use the word global south, but there are certain difference of opinions in the world, and we have been trying to bridge the gap among the differences of opinions of certain countries or country groups. So we are going to try the same thing because we have been reliant on the peace and prosperity in the international community, and that's what Japan has been doing, and we are going to do that as well.
India is in an interesting position. It's a rising power. It has some concerns about China. It may have some concerns about the United States. It's had good relations with Russia. And so the question is, how is, in terms of two perspectives, one is in terms of alliances and so on, it's quite a complicated picture, but also in terms of cooperation with these other countries. India was criticized even by the Biden administration for buying oil from Russia. And on the other hand, India is also, independent country, it can do what it wants. So how do you see India maneuvering in this rather complex new environment, not just AUKUS, but the other institutions in the region?
India is a member of many such groupings like Quad, BRICS. So any particular grouping is not against any particular country. So grouping has certain agenda, especially to how to develop, how to use these forums to have economic prosperity or a regional stability. So that is the purpose. So I don't see a relationship of one country is dependent on relationship with another country. So both they're independent. And also whatever these forums are not against any particular country.
And do you want to say something about Australia's vision on this?
Well, I think I've set out what our vision is. We see a good future for the Quad, and some of those areas of focus are so important that we keep working together on those key initiatives, and I think it has a good future.
Can I add something?
Of course.
Yeah. Regionally speaking, Indo-Pacific, we have to mention that the growing importance of ASEAN countries in the global economy, it's different from 15 years ago. And ASEAN always prizes centrality of ASEAN centrality. And we really think that region is quite important, and we'd like to work with them. And also Pacific Island countries, as those are areas I think Australia is quite active. But that area has also had a growing importance these days. And that's why we have been working on Open RAN, right, in Palau and Subal and a few other countries. So we just, of course, in the past, we have been, on the other hand, talking about global, governance, but also we just, for us, the immediate regions in the ASEAN countries and the Pacific Island countries. Those are the things which we really have very keen eye on.
Mm-hmm. So the Quad will be having this leaders meeting. I think India is slated to host it and Prime Minister Modi is visiting the United States soon. So what's your perspective on what Prime Minister Modi really wants to accomplish with the Quad, holding it in India? Is there some specific things he's looking to do, or have you heard from the government what might be some of the goals?
I think some of the ideas which were discussed during the previous summit meeting in September at Wilmington, they're also part of the Wilmington Declaration. And as it was mentioned in the joint statement of the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, so any new ideas which will come up until the next summit meeting, which we hosted in India, so all these ideas will be discussed at the working group level. So any new thing, they will also the ministers will also discuss. If there's any relevant thing, any new issues, then they will add it to the agenda of the leaders. So that's how we are looking at it.
Well, given the agenda of the Quad, which, as you say, is not just about defense cooperation, obviously, do you see some prospects for working with other existing organizations, right? CPTPP, of which the United States is not a member, but RCEP is another regional comprehensive economic partnership, which involves China. Not everything is anti-Chinese, since China is a member of these things. So how do you see this kind of what I've called nesting or cooperation among these institutions or division of labor, right? So what's striking is that the Asia Pacific had almost no significant institutions for many, many years, unlike Europe, which had the EU. And when the Asians started making institutions, there was an institution a week, right? I mean, so there's so many different institutions. And some people say, well, if you just keep making institutions, but they're not very effective at doing anything, and Australians have worried about this, and even Americans, everybody's worried about this, right? Institutional proliferations has some downsides. And then there's kind of mission creep. I mean, if you think about APEC, when it was created back in 1989, it was about free trade. And then suddenly we have lots of other things in APEC, and it kind of diffused into not doing as much as it might have. So do you think about this problem of institutional cooperation, given how many institutions we have in the Asia Pacific, or what might be your vision of that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Vinnie, that proliferation of these sorts of organisations is unhelpful. Each of the 4 Quad members is a comprehensive strategic partner with ASEAN.
Right.
And we all agree with the centrality of ASEAN to the Indo-Pacific. And from time to time, we have to counter some misinformation that is out there that the Quad is somehow contradictory to ASEAN. There's also the Pacific Island Forum, which we see as part of, it's an important part of the framework. So there's enough organisations, I think, that we can work with. They each have their place, and let's just get down to work and what we've got.
Okay. Consul Reddy, before we...
Yeah, I'd like to just add one thing. We also have this Indian Ocean Rim Association,
Right.
in addition to the Pacific Islands Forum and the ASEAN. So we would like to work with all these organizations. So initially you mentioned regarding some CPTPP, those are all different institutions. That is a free trade agreement kind of institution. So that you cannot compare with institutional Quad. So Quad, which initially, as I mentioned, came together for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, so that is also a priority. Like the maritime security, like when we did this Malabar exercise, so the intention is to have this interoperability and collaboration between the navies and coast guards. And we also have decided this year to have this at sea ship observer mission, wherein the coast guards of all the 4 partner countries will be on one ship, and they will try to develop this kind of interoperability and basically to keep these kind of shipping lines open, and also to be the first responder in case of any disaster or any kind of calamity. So that is one of the basic things. So over and above, we also have some, like the developing of the physical and digital infrastructure, and also some elements of healthcare and vaccine partnership, and the kind of critical and emerging technology collaborations. But this is not a proper enforceable agreement, something like the trade agreement you mentioned.
Right.
So they're totally different groupings.
Right. The Consul General Osumi, so as we said, there's so many of these institutions in the Asia Pacific. Do you think that's a good thing, or do you think there are too many, or should there be some coordination efforts? APEC, which I've worked on a lot, I run the APEC Center, if they had their way, I'm not speaking for you, I'm speaking for myself, would like all of these things to be under APEC, right? So is there some way to somehow coordinate these institutions without spending all the time diplomats on airplanes to 100 meetings a week? The joke about APEC, a poor excuse to chat. So they are always running around and good for frequent flyer miles, but maybe not so good for policy making.
No frequent flyer miles for me, at least personally. I think from afar, diplomacy is a kind of beautiful, nice talks over champagne or something, but in reality is that it's always muddling through. So the picture that you might see as a result could be a little bit confusing, but it's all through the efforts of muddling through. So I don't think that's kind of coordination. That kind of thing. Coordination is a very easy word, but it's difficult to implement. So each institution has its own mission, and that's something that they have to fulfill. And if not fulfilled, and people don't go on a business trip anymore. And that's how it works, I guess. But I think that the Quad itself, although we both, I think correctly and individually have good relations with ASEAN countries, and we have been working with Pacific Island countries as well, and that's something that we already are doing, but this particular setting of four willing and like-minded countries, four willing and capable like-minded countries, that's something I think it's of value, at least as of now, and probably for the future.
So I want to ask the last question, then maybe we'll go to questions, but this is not exactly about the Quad, but relationship in Asia-Pacific. So ASEAN, as you know, was a very key player in ASEAN +1, and then try to encourage, RCEP, and, as an active participant in CPTPP as well. And what I've seen is in terms of trade and finance, that everyone's very enthusiastic about ASEAN. And I remember doing some work, and I was trying to convince this company that they should pay attention to ASEAN, and the only country they wanted to talk about was China, 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 China. And I said, ASEAN has more than 500 million people. It's a very important region. And we've seen the South Koreans get very excited about ASEAN. They have a strategy. Taiwan has an ASEAN strategy. Japan has an ASEAN strategy. India has an ASEAN strategy. Australia. Are ASEAN countries going to get overwhelmed by the sudden enthusiasm for ASEAN? How do you see that evolving? Or can they absorb all this newfound enthusiasm?
I can't comment on that, but I don't think we should forget that the Quad countries represent 1.9 billion people, $30 trillion worth of GDP. So that's a lot of heft, and I think we can work with that. There's a lot that we can do together to enhance the lives of the people of the Indo-Pacific. So I think that's going to be my focus.
Okay, Councilman Reddy, do you want to say something about this ASEAN strategy?
As my colleague just now mentioned, all the countries have some sort of FTA, especially Australia,
right.
Japan. We have a FTA. We are also ASEAN Regional Forum Dialogue partner. So we also have a lot of bilateral agreements with a lot of ASEAN countries. So we want ASEAN to be the central to the Indo-Pacific overall strategy.
Yeah.
So
well, that's ASEAN would like that, so I think that's true.
That is the basic, in any declaration, that is a basic thing.
Would you like to comment on Japan's ASEAN strategy?
I think ASEAN
we have Singapore.
better answers, right? But I think for us, the ASEAN is very important, and ASEAN has achieved something very particular in that it's not a kind of homogeneous European institution. It's ASEAN is very diverse in terms of historical background, the cultural background, but they have achieved certain sense of their solidarity, and that's quite amazing for us. So, but answers should be responded by the
Well,
reps,
I'm sure we
you
can
know.
hear from them. So, all right. Well, thank you very much so far. It's a great question, great answers, I think. So,
Thank you to the speakers for that very insightful discussion. And thank you once again to the Motwani Jadeja Foundation, as well as Silicon Valley Bank for hosting us here today. We also will have our cultural networking session right now, where we have wine, sake, wine from Australia and sake from Japan right over here at the bar. And then we also have some appetizers from India right over there. So we thank you for the CGs and all of your teams for helping arrange all of the food today. For our guests, we hope to see you again soon. We have some upcoming events. On March 14th, everyone will have virtual access to an event on US-Japan updates from Washington. That's going to be happening in Seattle. On March 27th, we have a groundbreaker invite-only event at Freeman Winery. On April 11th, we have our annual Game Changers West Awards Gala. And on June 10th, we will be hosting our annual Envision India conference, which is going to be hosted in San Francisco this year. We hope we can see you all again soon, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you.